opinion was there's 4 shots fired at the crime scene. And all 4 bullets perforated the toilet door into the toilet cubicle.
What was the position of the deceased?
She was standing in front of the door, facing the door. I looked at the post-mortem report and I looked at this wound, how this wound was inflicted. Now, according to my consultation, that bullet penetrated and broke the hip bone of the deceased. Now, with this wound, if the bone is the hip bone is broken completely, it causes her to fall down from this, because this leg will not be able to stand up. Now, in this position, it gave me the impression that from that position, she fell down. And falling down, she moved backward. Now, that's where I could determine the importance of the magazine rack on the crime scene. If she fell down completely to the floor, she would be too low. The wound on the arm and the wound on the head would be too low to be in line with the bullet holes on the door. But if she's positioned on top of the magazine rack, it brings her position, the body and the position of the wounds in line with the bullet holes on the door. Bullet that penetrated on bullet hole mark B was shot, and the bullet missed her. Ricochet on bullet hole mark E on the wall, deflected to the bullet hole mark F on the other one, and it broke into fragments. Then the fragments that came from this bullet hit her on the back, creating the bruises on her back.
Then the 2 more bullet holes.
Right. The 2 more bullets, I couldn't determine which one was fired first, which one was fired the last. But in this instance, the deceased was most probably seated in a defensive position, whereby it could be something like in this position. How do I determine that? We look at the entrance wound on the side of it, and then the exit is on the inside part. Now, when you look at the exit of the wound, it's huge, and most of the body tissue from the arm have been transferred to the vest that she was wearing here. And the damages that's on the vest is from the bullet fragments that perforated the arm, damaged the vest, and caused the bruises on the chest.
Then we have 1 more shot.
Yes, my lady. If we look at the position that I'm referring to as the defensive position, it's like if you see in its position, the wound on the left hand, just between the 2 fingers, bullet perforated here, but the arm was now in contact with her, and she was a bit facing down. It comes in here. It also penetrated the head of the deceased. On impact with the skull, the bullet broke into 2 fragments. 1 fragment penetrated the skull, was removed during post-mortem, and then the other piece of a fragment exited towards the back of the head, and mostly was the lead on the bullet. That's the one that hit the wall, creating mark G on the wall. After this wound was inflicted on the head, she dropped immediately. She's in a seated position on top of the magazine rack, and dropping, she just dropped to the right-hand side, whereby the head ended up on top of the toilet seat. Now, when you do reconstruction, my lady, we look at the 3 possibilities, or the 3 positions. We look at the probable position, which is the most possible position, and we look at the possible position but awkward, and we look at the impossible position. If I can explain that, I'll say that if shooting without the prosthesis, holding the firearm, this is the most probable position that you could have shot. Now, shooting with the prosthesis, holding the firearm, it's possible, but it's an awkward position. The impossible position, I'll say that shooting while lying on the ground, holding the firearm in this position, to reach that height is going to be impossible.
In this short space of time, it is not reliable to determine that the second shot missed and not the first shot missed. Which shot hit first? It's probable. All we know is probable that the right side of the deceased was facing the door, because we see the splinters, the secondary wounds. From there on, it's difficult.
I disagree with that. I'm saying the deceased was facing, not the right side of the deceased was facing the door. I disagree with that, my lady.
How far would their arm have been from the door to cause all these secondary marks on the arm? Could you give me a distance?
I couldn't get the distance and I didn't test that. If you want me to do that, I can go and do that.
Yes, I would.
My lady, it doesn't mean it has to be very close to the door. Even at the distance of 30, 40 centimeters, it can still happen. At the distance, depends on how fast those splinters were. And if you look at the deceased, she was wearing a sleeveless vest. So it's easier for those splinters to hit her on the arm.
Could you give an explanation for the staining of the walls, floor, and railings that was visible on the scene?
My lady, it's a combination of contact staining, of drip staining, as well as arterial spurt. One of the notes that I did make at the post-mortem is that the deceased had long hair, and this hair was blood-soaked and can hold a large volume of blood. Together, the short pants that she also had on, which was photographed at the scene, was also saturated, and that can also hold a volume of blood. And this I would describe the main contributors to the formation of the drip trail.
Arriving at the scene, what were your conclusions as far as the toilet is concerned?
That the deceased sustained wounds while being in the toilet. These wounds were consistent with gunshot wounds from observations at the post-mortem, and that 3 of these wounds, which the deceased sustained, could have resulted in severe bleeding. UU would be the entire toilet, including the lid of the toilet. What can be seen here is very fine spatter. You can see broken pieces of hair together with particulate, in other words, tissue debris, and that would be consistent with the damage to the head of the deceased in photograph 136.
Is there any way that would assist the court to establish where the head was when the head was inflicted?
My lady, as I say, this would indicate to me that the head was in the surrounds of the toilet, because the pieces of broken hair and particulate and bone matter would follow in the direction of the projectile, because that's the conal direction of the force. So she must have sustained or received the wound somewhere in front of the lid of the toilet.
The deceased was moved from the toilet downstairs.
Yes.
What did you conclude? How did that happen?
My lady, on the toilet wall, denoted by my markings VV, that's the wall in front of the toilet. You can see there's an indication of motion, and this would most likely have been caused by the movement of the deceased out of the toilet. There was also a transient area in the bathroom, which are visualized on the photographs that were taken on the scene. On the 14th, the stained toweling, the area surrounding the cricket bat. There again, arterial spurt and transfer from blood-soaked hair could be seen. And during this process, it is also where I saw another interrelationship between the staining of the bat and the staining in the surrounds of the bathroom of that area.
Watch, like, tweet, post, follow, engage. Channel 199, the Oscar Pistorius Trial, a carte blanche channel, only on DSTV.